You bring up this idea of that really good player playing Wraith and able to have that ceiling of, wow, you're going in really aggressive, you're hitting all these like high risk, high reward shots. Wraith makes the most sense for that.
Oh no, there's another squad attacking.
But let's talk about that invincibility, like we kind of talked about. She's been at the top so long of this just meta of Apex Legends. Is this ability the reason? That's probably it. That's what everybody talks about. The tactical is the identity of Wraith. I think the portal's important too, and we're going to talk about it here soon. But for the most part, we're talking about the tactical when we talk about Wraith. What do you think? OP, overpowered? Is it fair currently? She's been on such a journey with it that I think it's quite interesting to look at in this sense.
The first thing to say is that, well, shameless plug, I'm wearing the third party Patreon merch that has Wraith's face on it. So, exclusive merch item for the patrons. Got to shout it out.
For
She's a
sure.
staple of the game. And
Mm-hmm.
when you think about fairness, well, if you are fighting a Wraith and you crack her shields and then she phases out of there and is able to get the bat off, man, there's nothing really you can do other than
Yeah.
follow as fast as possible. And that's risky because,
Mm-hmm.
especially if that Wraith is kind of out front, you do feel like even today, that's kind of a get out of a sticky situation where
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult to counter, I would say.
I mean,
You
when
are
it's used
visible,
at it,
but
yeah, when it's used at its best, they're invincible and hopefully leading you to their teammates. Like,
mhm,
so it's a hard counter unless we kind of talked about that situation where a lot of people use it where the teammates are down and you're just chasing the Wraith that's by themselves. That's an easy counter when the Wraith's the last person
yeah,
up.
and honestly, is it fair? Can it be frustrating? Yeah. Like when you do a lot of damage, then that Wraith slips away behind cover with her
Mm-hmm.
team. That's too bad because it feels like you missed an opportunity. If it was any
Mm-hmm.
other legend, maybe you'd get the knock. There are other abilities that can make you feel like that, like a Gibraltar Tactical.
Totally.
Um, but I think that the reason that this isn't a huge deal is yes, it does kind of err on the side of a death totem where you can go in hard, kind of
Mm-hmm.
risk it, try to do a lot of damage with a wingman or a peacekeeper, and then if things don't go well, you can get out of there and have another go. Does that matter? On the opposing side, if I'm holding my ground, if I'm doing my damage, and if I fend them off from being crazy, that's fine. We both
Mm-hmm.
get to reset. There's not really anything gained or lost other than Crazy Wraith came at you very aggressive and
Mm-hmm.
failed. If
I
they were
think that's
successful, would you be mad about the tactical? Because that's a playstyle choice.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting because like that use you're talking about right there that probably plays into some of her identity. Like the go in, really fire off those shots, take advantage, and then dip out. That's something that is only felt in pain if a top player is using the character.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just a, very average middle of the road player, you're not going to be able to knock a person in a 1-on-3, knock two people in a 1-on-3 or something, and take these 3-on-1s essentially or isolated 1v2s confidently. But these top tier players, that's more in their play style. And those top tier players in Apex Legends are sometimes playing Wraith and they're streaming a lot. And that's, I think you see a little bit of
Yeah.
the trickle down effect with her over time where it's like, oh my goodness, it's so cool when you watch like Asu play Wraith at this crazy level essentially. And she's just never seemed to drop below in low tier pick rate. Maybe in part because of that. Not saying that is the only
Yeah.
reason. There's a lot of reasons. That just could be one.
And you bring up this idea of that really good player playing Wraith and able to have that ceiling of, wow, you're going in really aggressive, you're hitting all these like high risk, high reward shots. Wraith makes the most sense for that. Her strength is that you're safe if you hit
Mm-hmm.
one button. We compare it to any other mobility, it isn't like that. Loba, you have to aim and wait.
Mm-hmm.
Pathfinder, you need to arc in the air. You have to do all these different things when you're not safe. Like Valk
Mhm.
can't just press a button and be safe after going in and getting a knock. So
Yeah.
Wraith's able to do that hit and run tactic, which is really, really good when you're trying to
Mhm.
do those almost shock attacks where you're going in trying to get one knock and then the other two can come in and kind of cover your retreat.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of the she's been at the top so long. Should she not be at the top? Should she be nerfed at all? Can she be nerfed anymore? Obviously, the tactical got that huge change to it back when the Crypto Town Takeover was introduced. Should we punish it more at all? Do we want to shift the meta in that
Yeah.
way? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have some opinions.
It's such a crucial time to be having this conversation because Ash is the first major competitor to Race Kit,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. A lot of people are drawing more connections with the Octane meta, but really that 3 is at the top of Apex. It's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing to talk about. And honestly, I think that Wraith's in a fine spot. I
Mm-hmm.
think that just the idea of invincibility is very, very strong. Is it overpowered? Not really, because like I said before, there's things you gain and lose. And if you're going in saying you're going to go crazy, play really aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and you run into two people and you can't get the tactical off, you lost.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that comes down to even though Wraith has this invincibility packed into
Mm-hmm.
that tactical, it can be countered. It is
Mm-hmm.
difficult to use. You are still taking a significant risk, but when it works, it really works well, and I think that's what people are addicted to when playing Wraith.
Totally. It's not what it once was at like the tippity top of Wraith's peak of just kind of like this obscene invincibility tactical. So she's come a long way, and I don't think she needs to go any further down unless if we do, I think you run the risk of a seer style thing happening where it's like to decrease this legend, you have to take away so much that there's no point. Then the character starts to lose identity. And like we said, she's a staple of Apex. She's
Yes.
everywhere in lore, merch, the cover, the cosplay of Wraith is everywhere. Like, that's not the type of popularity or legend you ever change, especially when, like you're saying, you don't really need to. She's not this
Yeah.
overpowered 100% pick rate in ALGS, 100% you have to have a Wraith on your team and ranked to win. She's just a legend that people like to play, essentially. So,
Yeah, and, I'm coming from this perspective that playing Wraith is an addiction, and a
mm-hmm.
lot of times, addictions are not the greatest thing, I personally think that playing Wraith is not very fun. Like, if you were to line up Wraith with all the other mobility legends, Octane, Valk,
Totally.
Pathfinder, I would choose any one over Wraith for a variety of reasons. And the
Mm-hmm.
biggest one being that there's just so much more to offer. I feel like Wraith's Kit is so focused in on doing one thing in one part of the game that early game, she doesn't have a lot of utility. Mid fight, you may not even use the tactical,
Mm-hmm.
where you'd probably use other things from other legends. And so that kind of hurts. And
Mm-hmm.
then I like to think of utility. What kind of tools do you have, and how can that give things to your team and give you the team utility to give you the edge? If I'm being nice, Wraith can absolutely win games with the combination of the tactical and the ultimate repositioning at a crucial time. The difficulty of that is extreme. The application of her abilities are honestly not there. And if you played any other legend, it's of my opinion that you'd get more out of the abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though the tactical is quite strong, and in one situation you can get yourself saved, I'm of the school of thought that you could gain more before things
Mm-hmm.
hit the fan
Mm-hmm.
if you played other legends and get just more team utility.
And I do think that's a reason some people do play her and think she is
Hmm.
fun, though. Like the fact that in a gun game, you're not as focused on the abilities potentially sometimes. That is a pro in of itself in a way. It's also a con, but I think there's definitely different perspectives you can take on that, which plays into her popularity per se. And then the last thing I'll mention in terms of talking popularity, I mentioned I have the Wraith heirloom. I got that because I played Wraith when she was kind of at the peak, and Henry and I were grinding ranked, and we felt like, hey, we had to play a Wraith with a Watson on Kings Canyon to win. And I just happened to get lucky with my shards then. I was playing her all the time, so I got it. It's interesting. Wraith is probably a lot of OG players' first heirloom. She was the first heirloom to be introduced into the game, and because of that, she's going to have some popularity. Once you get an heirloom, you really want to continue to play with that legend no matter what happens. And so I do think that's important. I wonder if there is anywhere a breakdown of like what legend has bought the most heirlooms, but I would garner that she might be towards the top of that list if so.
I think she's certainly at the top in terms
Hmm.
of heirloom ownership, and it's also a huge advantage that she is in the original pack of legends. You know, that
Totally.
means she's
Hmm.
the most accessible. When you're a day one player, you're going to have access to her. You already know she's powerful. It definitely leads you to play Wraith and get used to that kit. And like you said, kind of having a streamlined kit is approachable and
Hmm.
easy. But I think there's more out there. There's more fun to be had. There's more
Hmm.
power to be had. And the truth is, to me, Wraith is probably the most selfish legend. You know, she's able to remove herself from the fight. She's going to play kind of crazy. And because of that, and that's too bad, you
Hmm.
know, invincibility, very strong, but that is concentrated in one person. You know, it's kind of like a smoke, but can't be as countered with a Digi or a Bloodhound,
Hmm.
but it's just you. It's not versatile. You're not going to be using it to attack. You're not going to be using it to rotate. You're not going to be
Hmm.
using it to heal. You're going to be using it to get out of trouble. And I like to not get in trouble.
Yeah. The best wraiths are helping their team by using their guns. And that's a strength and a weakness
Yeah.
in of itself. So I totally think what you're saying is very fair. And I think to summarize that little point and that kind of discussion on the attack, I think we're both in the camp that she is not an OP legend right now that is ruining and dominating the game for people that I think someone might assume that is new to Apex. It's been like, wait, Ray's been the most popular legend for 11 seasons? Like, what is going on?
Seems pretty crazy. The only like we think about this all the time, and it's been so long that
Hmm.
the only conclusion that I have is that it's an addiction pretty much. I think people are just fixed in playing Wraith,
Hmm.
and she's not as powerful as they might think, but I don't think she needs to be nerfed. I don't think she's oppressive. I don't think she's
Hmm.
overpowered. She can be fun for many, but I don't think she's the end all be all. And so I don't think we'll see any, you know, crazy balancing changes. And
Hmm.
in the past, developers have really honed in on making sure that she wasn't as strong,
Hmm.
but it seems on the competitive side, things have kind of matured and
Hmm.
filtered out. And in the public opinion, I don't think she harms Apex in any way.
Boom! Whole squad down.
Hey, brother, not today. Maybe tomorrow.